This wasn't an atomic bomb, it was ordinary air turned into flame. Summer 1943. Hamburg, a million-strong, business-like port city, where the clanking of metal in the shipyards mingles with the voices of merchants, the honking of trucks, and the acrid smell of burnt coal from factory chimneys. But now this city is suffocating. Thick smoke billows through the streets, blurring the outlines of houses and humanity, and a tenuous, unbearable sense of anticipation hangs over all who still believed in a chance rescue. At midnight, a new sound rises over the city. Not the wail of a siren, not the rumble of trains pulling away from platforms, but a low, growing roar, reminiscent of the footsteps of a titan. It's not marked on maps, not taken into account in civil defense. A firestorm is what will become the city's future. At that moment, no one suspects that the normal air will be replaced by heat that melts the asphalt, and the human body will fall victim to the elements. Hamburg lived its normal life, where money changed hands and politicians talked about saving measures. A week later, all that remained of the city was a monument to human cruelty, ashes, and 40,000 unburied bodies. The chronicle of that week would become a symbol of the apocalypse, recounted not only by survivors, but also by those analyzing the war centuries later. Ordinary Hamburgers don't yet know that beyond their borders, on airfields in North Yorkshire or Suffolk, Royal Air Force bomber crews await orders, preparing to coin a new term for military history: moral bombing. The decision to launch an offensive rather than a defensive strike was not the result of desperation, but a cold-blooded calculation. A strike not against troops or factories, but directly against the people, against their will to live. Night fell when the air became an instrument of torment. A hot wind began to pierce everything. Staircases in buildings melted, glass hung in drops. The asphalt became a sticky, viscous surface, impossible to run through. Fire began to consume everything in sight: books, paintings, memories, lives. In the streets, people tried to save themselves, dragging children and the elderly, not realizing that there was no salvation anywhere, not at home, not in cathedrals, not in parks or squares. The details of that night are terrifying in their truth. Witnesses say there wasn't enough air in the basements, and everyone knew that at some point, even the oxygen they were trying to conserve would ignite. The streetlights disappeared, replaced by the ragged red glow of flames. An unspoken order was in effect in the houses: only rescue the living. Documents and valuables faded from memory, giving way to fear. Some tried to flee to the Elbe, jumping into the water, hoping the liquid would carry away the heat. But the water temperature in the coastal strip soared above 40 degrees Celsius. Those who found themselves there often lost consciousness and sank to the bottom, taking with them the illusion of salvation. Fires raging in 3 parts of the city simultaneously combined, creating an effect previously only theoretical. Smoke rose 4 kilometers, obscuring the sky and starlight. Temperatures at the storm's epicenter reached 800 degrees Celsius. Metal melted, street clocks stopped. People threw themselves from balconies. The fear of fire was greater than the fear of death from heights. Doctors and health workers who went out onto the streets were unable to provide assistance. Bandages burned faster than they could be applied. Infant formula turned into boiling syrup. Hundreds of cars remained stuck in the streets, blocking exits and becoming entanglements for those fleeing. The nighttime bombings brought the city to a boiling point. People recalled the horrors of previous years, but nothing compared to that nighttime extravaganza of fire, in which the individual ceased to exist and collective suffering began to exist. The next morning, the terrifying statistics appeared: 1,500 dead on the first night, and thousands more doomed. None of this is made up. War chronicles, eyewitness accounts, and official RAF reports confirm the trend. Hamburg became the site of a genuine firestorm for the first time. This word will later appear in all the world's languages, becoming a symbol of a new era of cruelty. And all this horror began with simple words: the order, attack. A very slow introduction, a harbinger of disaster. And then, an explosion that turned life into an agonizing race for salvation. This story is only just beginning. 1943. Half of Europe is in ruins, but Germany holds the front, not surrendering a single major city. Every German factory, port, and oil depot supplies the front with thousands of tons of shells, coal, and fuel. In Hamburg, tens of thousands of workers walk through grimy streets every morning to their machines and assembly lines. Submarines are being built in the shipyards, and new raids are being planned at naval headquarters. Before the air raids, life in Hamburg resembled a strange mixture of war and peace. Shops were open, cinemas were open, doctors were seeing patients, and the mayor was wondering how to manage the new tax revenues. Everything seemed normal, if not for the air raid sirens in the evenings. Some residents had become accustomed to the nightly sirens, but they still believed that large-scale attacks were reserved for Berlin and the Ruhr, not their hometown. Britain is trying to pressure Germany with constant air raids. Every month, the statistics on pilot kills grow more relentless. Flying across the North Sea is a gamble. Many British crews never return from missions, and families lose their breadwinners one after another. But the return blow to London, Coventry, and Manchester is still fresh in the British memory. Their command understands that the war can only be won by breaking not industry, but the will of the nation. The concept of moral bombing is emerging, an existential attack on everything that creates a sense of security. Bombing factories isn't enough. The civilian population must be convinced that resistance is futile, that the very fabric of the German city is incapable of withstanding fire and chaos. The overall plan at RAF meetings: select a target where the moral impact of destruction will outweigh even its military value. Hamburg, Europe's largest port, the heart of German industry, a strategic hub with 1 million residents and dozens of major transport and logistics hubs, is in the crosshairs. It's not just a city, it's a symbol of the Third Reich's military might. It's where they build, store, and ship. Everything vital is concentrated here: tank engines, chemical reagents, naval equipment, oil reserves, and steel. At RAF headquarters, aerial photographs are piled high. All of them depict densely packed neighborhoods, extensive railway networks, river canals, warehouses, and factories. Analysts calculate wind directions, building density, and the vulnerability of fire departments. The goal is to destroy not just one structure, but the very fabric of urban life. If the bombing covers several areas at once, firefighters and rescuers will be overwhelmed. Theoretically, a chain reaction of fires will ensue. For the first time, tactics are built not around factories and train stations, but around panic, mass exodus, and moral breakdown. The technology of destruction expands the boundaries of military ethics. Briefings are broadcast with the words, "The target is no longer production, but the psyche, motivation, and the will to wage war." Beyond this lies a disturbing new frontier, where war moves from soldiers to children and the elderly. American air power, an ally, is also making its own adjustments, operating during the day, not waiting for nightfall. Their pilots are renowned for their precision strikes, persistently targeting infrastructure and transport targets. But with the consent of the British command, all of Hamburg has been designated as a total destruction zone. Engineers are developing new bombs, high explosive bombs with enormous payloads, and incendiary bombs capable of igniting fires on any surface. British and American technology complement each other. One strike at night, the other during the day, without rest, without mercy. Calculations continue day and night. The calendars mark July 24th, the start of the first attack. The plan is to start fires in 3 points at once, to condense the living flames into a gigantic conflagration. But even the most daring strategists are terrified by the scale. No one imagines that a classic air operation will develop into a disaster bordering on a natural disaster. Fire, wind, ash, all planned on paper, but in reality, it will become a new phenomenon, later dubbed a firestorm. The idea is ready. The order awaits signature. The city of Hamburg awaits its fate, unaware that it will become the first city to fall victim to the strategy of moral terror in a world war. Royal Air Force Headquarters, July 1943. Seated around a table are military strategists, engineers, intelligence analysts, and Sir Arthur Harris, the man later nicknamed Bomber Harris. In front of them is a map of Germany, dotted with red dots. Each dot represents a target, but today only one is being discussed: Hamburg. Harris looks at photographs of the city taken by reconnaissance aircraft from an altitude of 7,000 meters. Dense buildings, narrow streets, wooden attics, and old houses with sloping roofs, an ideal environment for fire spread. Analysts have already calculated that if enough fires are started simultaneously, the city's fire protection system will collapse. Hamburg will become a testing ground for the firestorm theory. The operation is codenamed Gomorrah, the biblical city destroyed by fire from heaven for the sins of its inhabitants. The symbolism is no accident. It's a message not only to the Germans, but to the entire world. Britain is demonstrating its ability to unleash apocalypse on any enemy city. The operation's first revolutionary technology was window. It's a simple yet brilliant idea. Thousands of strips of aluminum foil, each about a foot long, are dropped from bombers directly into the air. When the foil disperses in the atmosphere, German radars see a cloud of false signals instead of actual aircraft. Air defense operators are confused. Screens display hundreds, even thousands, of targets. It's impossible to tell which are the real bombers and which are just metallic debris. Until this point, Germany's air defense system had been one of the best in the world. The Würzburg and Freya radar stations could detect British aircraft hundreds of kilometers away, and Messerschmitt Bf 110 fighters scrambled to intercept bombers as they approached the city. Flak anti-aircraft batteries fired with radar-guided precision. But window instantly reduced this entire system to a useless pile of metal and wires. British engineers had known about this technology since 1942, but hadn't used it, fearing the Germans would copy the idea and use it against Britain itself. But by the summer of 1943, the calculations had changed. Germany was no longer capable of launching massive strikes against London, and the RAF was willing to take the risk. The second part of the plan is coordination with the Americans. The USAAF, the United States Air Force, agreed to conduct daylight strikes. Their B-17 Flying Fortress and B-24 Liberator bombers specialize in precision strikes against industrial targets, shipyards, oil depots, and railway junctions. The Americans fly during the day, when visibility is better and they can aim accurately. The British strike at night, dropping incendiary bombs on residential areas, causing widespread fires. The plan is simple but brutal. The RAF strikes at night, causing chaos and fires. In the morning, people emerge from their shelters, thinking the worst is over. But then the Americans arrive and finish off what's left. Then, the next night, the British return again. And so on, several times in a row, without respite, without a chance to recover. Harris and his staff are studying weather reports. July is a hot month, with low humidity and moderate winds. Ideal conditions for fires. If the outside temperature is above 25 degrees Celsius, the wooden structures of buildings are dry and highly flammable. A single fire will quickly spread to neighboring houses. Analysts calculate the bombing density. To create a firestorm, a huge number of incendiary bombs must be dropped on a limited area in a short period of time. If fires occur simultaneously within a radius of several kilometers, the rising currents of hot air will interact. Hot air rises, while cold air is drawn in from below from all sides, generating winds of up to 200 kilometers per hour. The temperature at the center of such a storm can reach 800 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt metal. This isn't just a theory. Similar effects have been observed in nature during large forest fires, but no one has ever created a firestorm artificially in the center of a city with 1 million residents. The bombs are loaded. High explosive bombs weighing up to 1,000 kilograms are designed to destroy roofs, shatter windows, and create conditions for incendiary bombs to penetrate buildings. Then come the incendiary bombs, small ones, only about 2 kilograms each, but there are thousands of them. They contain thermite, magnesium, and phosphorus, substances that burn at temperatures above 2,000 degrees Celsius and are not extinguished by water. If you try to douse such a bomb with water, it will burn even brighter. Bombers line up at airfields across England. Lancasters, Halifaxes, and Stirlings, heavy four-engine machines, each capable of carrying up to 7 tons of bombs. Crews are being briefed. Pilots, navigators, and gunners. They all know what lies ahead. Many of them have flown over Germany before, seen anti-aircraft fire, and lost comrades. But none had ever taken part in an operation of this scale. Squadron commanders hand out maps with flight routes. Waves of bombers will approach the target from different directions to confuse German air defenses. The first wave drops flares. They create a bright light that guides subsequent waves to bombing targets. Then come high explosive bombs, then incendiary bombs. July 24th. The date has been set. The weather is favorable. The order has been signed. 791 bombers are ready for takeoff. 2,300 tons of bombs are loaded. The crews take their places. The engines roar. One after another, the planes take to the skies, form formation, and head east across the North Sea toward the coast of Germany. Evening is falling in Hamburg. People are eating dinner, putting the children to bed, listening to the radio. Some hear the distant rumble of engines, but they're used to the nightly alarms. The sirens haven't been turned on yet. Life goes on as usual. But in a few hours, this city will change forever. July 24th, 1943, 11:45 p.m. An armada of 791 British bombers is moving over the North Sea. The formation stretches for tens of kilometers. Each plane carries a deadly payload: high explosive bombs capable of destroying a building, and thousands of incendiary bombs, each the size of a thermos flask, but capable of reducing a house to a blaze in minutes. The crews are silent. Radio communications are kept to a minimum. Any extra signal could reveal their position to German interceptors. The pilots stare into the darkness ahead. The navigators consult their maps, and the gunners scan the sky, expecting the appearance of Luftwaffe fighters. But for now, the sky is empty and calm. At the German radar stations on the coast, the operators notice something strange. The screens of Würzburg and Freya, which usually clearly show approaching aircraft, are suddenly filled with thousands of blips. There are too many targets. It's impossible. The British can't have that many aircraft. The operators tweak the controls, checking the equipment. Could it be interference? Perhaps a technical malfunction? This is window. Thousands of strips of aluminum foil falling from the sky like metallic snow. Each strip reflects a radar beam, creating a false target. German radars see not 791 aircraft, but tens of thousands of phantoms. The air defense system is paralyzed. Fighters take off, but fly practically blind, unsure of their direction. Anti-aircraft batteries open fire at random, shooting into the empty sky. It's midnight. The first wave of British bombers crosses the German coastline. Hamburg, the city of lights, is dark below, now observing a blackout. The streets are plunged into darkness. The windows are covered with thick curtains. The streetlights are out. Only the Elbe River faintly reflects the moonlight, serving as a guide for navigators. 0:57. Air raid sirens begin to wail throughout the city. People wake up, grab their children, and run down to basements and bomb shelters. This is now a routine procedure. Over the years of war, hamburgers have learned to react quickly. Many carry small suitcases with documents and valuables. Some grab family photographs. Children cry. Adults try to remain calm. 1 a.m. The first flares fall on the city. They flash with a blinding white light, suspended by parachutes, slowly descending and illuminating everything around them like daylight. These are markers for the next waves of bombers. They indicate the precise areas to drop. The city suddenly becomes visible from an altitude of 4,000 meters. Streets, squares, churches, factories, everything is laid bare by the merciless light. 1:02 a.m. The bombing begins. High explosive bombs, weighing between 250 and 1,000 kilograms, fall first. Explosions shake the earth. Buildings shake, glass blows out of windows, roofs cave in. The purpose of the high explosive bombs is not just to destroy, but to open the buildings for the next wave. The blast wave tears off roof tiles, knocks out doors, and creates cracks in the walls. Then come the incendiary bombs. Thousands of small cylinders fall from the sky like deadly hail. They fall through ruined roofs, land in attics, apartments, and streets. Seconds after impact, they ignite. Thermite burns at 2,000 degrees Celsius. Magnesium produces a bright white flame, and phosphorus adheres to surfaces and continues to burn even underwater. The first fires begin in the Hamburg district, a densely populated working-class neighborhood. Wooden attics ignite instantly. The flames spread from house to house. The wind carries sparks. Fire crews try to respond, but they are too few to cope with the number of fires. Furthermore, many fire stations themselves are hit by bombs. In the basements, people hear explosions above. The building shakes with each impact. Plaster falls from the ceiling. Some pray, some hug loved ones, some simply sit in stupor. Children cover their ears with their hands, trying to drown out the deafening roar. 1:30 a.m. The city is ablaze. Hundreds of buildings are already burning simultaneously. Smoke rises in columns, coalescing into a huge cloud that obscures the stars. British pilots, flying at an altitude of 4 kilometers, see the flames reflected on the wings of their planes. Some later say the light from the fires was so bright that they could read maps without a flashlight. The waves of bombers continue to advance. One after another, the planes enter a combat course, drop their deadly payload, and turn back. German fighters attempt to intercept them, but window does its job. Most attacks miss. Anti-aircraft batteries fire into the sky, but the shells explode far from their intended targets. 2 a.m. In the city center, the fires are coalescing. Individual fires are merging into one giant blaze covering several square kilometers. Street temperatures reach several hundred degrees. People trying to escape from basements are met with a wall of heat and smoke. Some take a few steps and collapse, suffocated. Others try to flee, but their clothes catch fire from the heat. One woman later recalled, "I went outside and saw that everything around me was on fire. The houses, the trees, even the road seemed hot. I tried to run, but the air burned my lungs with every breath. I saw people running like living torches." 3 a.m. The raid ends. The last bombers drop their cargo and turn west, toward the English coast. But the fires continue to rage. The city turns into a sea of flames. Smoke rises to a height of 5 kilometers, visible for hundreds of kilometers. By dawn, the casualties are being counted. Around 2,500 people died on the first night. Thousands more were injured. Tens of thousands were left homeless. The city's central districts lie in ruins. Firefighters are still battling the blaze, but it's impossible to cope with the number of fires. Of the 791 bombers participating in the raid, German air defenses managed to shoot down only 12. The rest returned safely to base. The crews report the operation was a complete success. Window worked perfectly. The German defense was paralyzed. The morning of July 25th dawns in Hamburg. Survivors emerge from basements and see what remains of their city. Many don't recognize familiar streets. Entire neighborhoods have been wiped off the face of the earth. Corpses lie in the streets. The wounded groan and call for help. Smoke still hangs in the air, making breathing difficult. People begin searching for their loved ones, rummaging through the rubble, trying to salvage some of their belongings. But most understand that this is only the beginning. The British will return, and the next night could be even more terrifying. The morning of July 25th, 1943. Hamburg greets the dawn in smoke and ash. Those who spent the night in basements slowly emerge. Many can't believe their eyes. The streets they've walked their entire lives have been reduced to piles of rubble. Familiar buildings, shops, schools, churches are either destroyed or still smoldering from the inside. Families search for each other. Screams, cries, desperate pleas. Hans, Greta, where are you? Some find their loved ones alive, hugging each other, crying with relief. Others find only bodies under the rubble. Makeshift morgues are set up right on the streets. The bodies are covered with blankets, sheets, whatever is available. Fire crews are still working. But there's not enough water. Many water mains are broken. Hoses are being extended to the Elbe River. But the pressure isn't enough to reach the upper floors of the burning buildings. The firefighters look like ghosts, their faces blackened by soot, their eyes red from smoke, their movements mechanical from fatigue. Civil defense is struggling to organize the evacuation of the wounded. Ambulances are barely able to cope. There are too few of them for the number of victims. The wounded are being placed on sidewalks, in parks, anywhere there is even a little space. Doctors and nurses are working non-stop, applying bandages, amputating burned limbs, trying to save those who can still be saved. But at 10 a.m., a new wave is already flying over the North Sea. This time, it's the Americans, 68 B-17 Flying Fortress bombers from the U.S. 8th Air Force. Their target is specific: industrial facilities that the British might have missed during the night. The Blohm plus Voss shipyards, where submarines are built. Oil refineries. Power plants. Railroad junctions. American tactics differ from the British. They fly during the day, at high altitudes, around 7 to 8 kilometers, where German fighters are less effective. Their B-17 bombers are called Flying Fortresses, for good reason. Each aircraft is armed with 13 12.7mm machine guns, capable of repelling fighter attacks from all directions. 11 a.m. The air raid siren sounds again over Hamburg. People who just emerged from their shelters run back in panic. Many don't make it. Some simply fall to the ground where they stand, cover their heads with their hands, and pray. This time, German air defenses are ready. The overnight disaster forced command to throw all its forces into defending the city. Messerschmitt Bf 109 and Focke-Wulf FW 190 fighters take off from airfields around Hamburg. Anti-aircraft batteries with 80mm flak guns take up positions and target acquisition. Radars are intermittent after nighttime jamming, but visibility is good during the day. Pilots can see the enemy with the naked eye. A dogfight erupts in the sky. German fighters attack a formation of American bombers. The B-17's machine gunners return fire. Tracer bullets streak the sky like red lines. Several German fighters fall, engulfed in flames. One B-17 is hit in the engine and begins to lose altitude, the crew bailing out. But the Americans hold their formation. Their tactics are based on mutual support. The bombers fly in a tight formation, covering each other with fire. Attacking such a formation is mortally dangerous, even for an experienced German pilot. 11:20. The Americans are on a combat course. The bombardiers are looking through Norden sights, a highly accurate optical device that allows them to drop bombs from an altitude of 8 kilometers with an accuracy of several dozen meters. The target is the shipyards on the banks of the Elbe. The bomb bay hatches open. The bombing begins. High explosive bombs weighing 500 and 1,000 pounds fall, whistling through the air. 20 seconds later, they reach the ground. Explosions rock the port area. Huge steel sheds where submarines are assembled collapse like houses of cards. Cranes collapse, falling into the river. Oil storage tanks explode, sending plumes of black smoke hundreds of meters high. Railroad tracks are mangled, train cars overturned. But not all bombs hit industrial sites. Some fall on residential areas adjacent to the shipyards. Houses, already damaged by the night's air raid, are completely destroyed. People in basements perish under the rubble. Entire streets are wiped off the face of the earth. Anti-aircraft fire intensifies. The sky is blackened by the explosions of flak shells. Shrapnel pierces the skin of the bombers, injuring crew members. One B-17 takes a direct hit to the fuel tank and explodes in midair. The debris slowly falls, tumbling through the air. 11:45. The Americans complete their bombing run and turn back. German fighters pursue them for several more kilometers, trying to shoot down any stragglers. Ultimately, the Germans claim 3 B-17s shot down. The Americans claim the destruction of 8 German fighters. On the ground, new casualties are being counted. Several hundred more killed, several thousand wounded. Industrial facilities have been seriously damaged. The Blohm plus Voss shipyard, where the most advanced Type 21 submarines were built, has been shut down for months. An oil refinery is ablaze. It will take several days to extinguish. By midday, smoke from the fires can be seen from 50 kilometers away. Black clouds billow over the city, rising to heights of several kilometers. The sun barely breaks through this curtain. The streets are as dark as twilight. People are beginning to realize that remaining in the city is mortally dangerous. A spontaneous evacuation begins. Entire families gather as much belongings as they can carry and head to the outskirts of the city, to the roads leading to the suburbs. Thousands of people are walking, pushing children in carts, and carrying the elderly. The train station descends into chaos. The trains are overcrowded. People hang from the steps and sit on the roofs of the cars. Many wait for hours, hoping to board any train. Nazi officials try to organize an evacuation, but they find it impossible to cope with the influx of people. By the evening of July 25th, more than 100,000 people had already left Hamburg. They were walking along the roads, spending the night in fields, forests, and neighboring villages. Many didn't know where they were going, just to get away from the burning city. Those who remain are preparing for another night. Everyone understands. The British will return. They clear the basements of rubble and reinforce them with beams. They store water in buckets and basins. They prepare wet blankets to protect themselves from sparks and heat. Hospitals are running low on medications. There's no anesthesia. Surgeries are being performed without sedation, and patients are screaming in pain. Bandages are running low. They're using torn sheets, shirts, and anything that can serve as a bandage. It's the evening of July 25th. The city is quiet. People are sitting in basements, waiting. The western sky is darkening. And somewhere out there, beyond the horizon, at airfields in England, bombers are being refueled again. Bombs are being loaded again. And crews are being prepared for takeoff again. But the next blow won't come immediately. The British are giving the city a respite, 2 days. Not out of mercy, but because of the weather. Meteorologists are predicting rain and low clouds. But on July 27th, the weather will improve. And then the real apocalypse will begin. July 27th, 1943. After 2 days of relative calm, Hamburg prepares for another night. The city didn't recover in those 2 days. That would have been impossible. But people tried to establish some semblance of normal life. They cleared the streets of rubble. They buried the dead. They searched for missing relatives. Many hoped the worst was over. They were wrong. What happened on the night of July 27, 28 will go down in history as the world's first artificially created firestorm, a phenomenon of such destructive power that it was compared to natural disasters, hurricanes, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes. It's the evening of July 27th. 787 bombers are lined up at British airfields, almost as many as participated in the first raid. But this time, the bomb load is different. While previously a mixture of high explosive and incendiary bombs was used, now the emphasis is on incendiary bombs. Each Lancaster carries thousands of small thermite bombs. The total weight of incendiary ammunition exceeds 2,300 tons. The strategy is simple and ruthless. Create the maximum number of fires simultaneously in a limited area. RAF analysts have calculated everything down to the last detail. If the fires are dense enough, they will interact with each other. Hot air from the fire rises, and cool air is sucked in at high speed from all directions to replace it. The effect is that of a giant furnace, with the city becoming the fuel and the wind the bellows fanning the flames. 10:00 p.m. The first bombers take off from English airfields. They fly across the North Sea along the same route as the first time. They drop window again paralyzing German radar. The Germans are already aware of this technology and have tried to counter it, but so far without success. In Hamburg, people hear the familiar wail of sirens. Many automatically grab their children and run for basements. Some decide to take a risk, leaving the city right now, in the dark, without waiting for the air raid. The roads are clogged with people carrying suitcases, shopping carts, and strollers. 0-0. The first flares fall on the eastern part of the city, the Hammerbrook, and Borgfelde districts. These are working-class neighborhoods with dense buildings, narrow streets, and old wooden houses. A perfect environment for the spread of fire. 0:05, hell begins. The first incendiary bombs rain down. Thousands of small cylinders pierce roofs, falling into attics, streets, and parks. They ignite almost instantly. Thermite burns at 2,000 degrees Celsius, scorching through wood, shingles, and even brick. Magnesium bombs produce a blinding white flame. Phosphorus adheres to any surface and continues to burn until it burns out completely. Within the first 15 minutes of the airstrike, several hundred separate fires broke out in the Hammerbrook area. Fire crews tried to respond, but it was pointless. For every fire extinguished, 10 new ones started. Water was in dire need. Many firefighters simply abandoned their hoses and ran to save their families. 0:30. The fires begin to merge. At first, 2 neighboring houses burn separately. Then the fire spreads from one to the other. Then a third, a fourth, a fifth ignites. Entire streets become corridors of flame. And then something happens that no one expected, even those who planned this operation. The air begins to move. At first, a light breeze. Then stronger, even stronger. Half an hour later, winds are blowing over Hamburg at 80 kilometers per hour. But this is no ordinary wind. It's not blowing in one direction, but from all directions toward the center of the fire. Hot air from the fire rises at a terrifying speed, creating a low-pressure area. Cold air from the outskirts of the city is drawn into this area, creating hurricane-force winds. 1 a.m. Winds reach 150 kilometers per hour. Trees are uprooted. Streetlights fall. Cars are pushed aside. People trying to run along the streets are literally blown away by the wind, thrown into walls, onto the ground, into fire. One survivor later recounted, "The wind was so strong that I couldn't walk against it. It picked up people and threw them around like rag dolls. I saw a woman who was lifted into the air by the wind and thrown into a burning building." 1:30 a.m. Temperatures at the center of the fire reach 800 degrees Celsius. This is the temperature at which aluminum melts, steel softens, and water boils instantly. The asphalt on the streets becomes sticky and viscous. People trying to run get stuck in it as if in tar. Their shoes stick, and they drag their feet, leaving their soles on the road as they continue to run barefoot. The basements become unbearably hot. Temperatures rise to 60, 70 degrees Celsius. People suffocate, not from the smoke, although there is smoke, but from the heat. The air burns their lungs when they inhale. Children lose consciousness. Old people die right where they sit. Someone tries to go outside. They open the basement door and are met with a wall of flames. A literal wall. The fire burns so thickly that nothing can be seen through it. The temperature outside is higher than in an oven. Anyone who steps outside instantly catches fire. Clothes, hair, skin. 2 a.m. The firestorm reaches its peak. 8 square kilometers of the city are burning like one giant bonfire. Flames rise to a height of 1.5 kilometers. A column of smoke is visible from 200 kilometers away. British pilots, already returning to base, can see the glow of the fire even from hundreds of kilometers over the sea. Wind speeds reach 240 kilometers per hour, the equivalent of an EF3 tornado. It's a hurricane born of fire. The wind tears off entire roofs, overturns trams, and rips rails from the ground. The sound of this wind has been described as a continuous howl, a roar that drowns out everything else. Explosions, screams, the crackling of burning buildings. Thousands perish in this hell. Many die not from the fire, but from lack of oxygen. The fire consumes all available oxygen within a radius of several kilometers. People in the basement simply fall asleep and never wake up. A death from hypoxia, silent, almost painless. Whole families are found later, sitting or lying down, as if asleep. Others die from carbon monoxide, a gas produced during combustion in oxygen-deficient conditions. The gas is invisible and odorless. A person takes a few breaths and loses consciousness. Death occurs within minutes. Still others are burned alive. Bodies are found in the streets, charred beyond recognition, shrunk by the heat to the size of a child. In some places, the heat was so intense that all that remained of the people were shadows on the walls, silhouettes burned into the brick. 4 a.m. The raid ends. The last bombers depart, but the firestorm continues. It lives its own life, no longer needs bombs. The city sets itself on fire, destroys itself. Only by dawn did the fire begin to die down. Not because it had been extinguished. There was nothing and no one to put it out. They simply ran out of fuel. Everything that could burn had burned. Houses, trees, furniture, clothes, books, people. All that remained were smoking ruins, the blackened skeletons of buildings, and hot ash covering the streets in a thick layer. The morning of July 28th. The survivors emerge onto the surface and see the end of the world. The city is gone. There's only a dead space where everything has been burned, melted, and destroyed. The smell of charred flesh hangs in the air. The bodies have been burning. The ground is still hot. It hurts to walk even in shoes. The dead are being counted. That night alone, more than 40,000 people. More than in all previous air raids combined. More British casualties than in the entire Battle of London. One city, one night, 40,000 lives. The firestorm happened. The theory became reality. And humanity received a new word to describe horror. It's the morning of July 28th, 1943. The sun rises over Hamburg, but its light barely penetrates the thick curtain of smoke and ash. The city is shrouded in a gray haze, smelling of burning, charred flesh, and chemicals. The ground temperature in some places still exceeds 100 degrees Celsius. You could boil an egg just by placing it on the asphalt. Those who survived the night in the basements on the outskirts of the city are slowly making their way out. Many can't believe they're still alive. Some are blind, their eyes seared by heat and smoke. Others are covered in burns, their skin hanging in patches, revealing muscle and bone. Still others appear physically unharmed, but their minds are broken. They walk like zombies, wandering aimlessly through the ruins, unresponsive to those around them. Hans Erich Naumann, a 32-year-old shipyard worker, would later write in his diary, "I emerged from the basement and didn't recognize my street. The houses I'd lived in all my life were gone. All that remained were blackened walls, roofless, windowless, doorless. I walked down the street and saw bodies, dozens, hundreds of them. Some lay as if sleeping. Others were twisted in unnatural positions, charred black. I was looking for my wife and daughter. I found them 3 days later in a common grave. I only recognized them by my wife's wedding ring." Marta Grunwald, a 28-year-old nurse, recalled, "There were so many wounded that we didn't know where to start. People were lying right in the streets, on sidewalks, in parks. Many were so badly burned that we couldn't even move them. The skin was peeling off in our hands. We ran out of all the medicine by midday. There was no morphine, no bandages, not even clean water. We performed amputations without anesthesia. People screamed so loudly that I can still hear them years later." Eyewitness accounts paint a picture that is difficult to imagine, let alone describe in words. People ran through the streets, their feet sticking to the molten asphalt. They dragged their feet, leaving the soles of their shoes on the road as they continued to run barefoot across the scorching surface. The skin on their feet charred, but the adrenaline and fear were so strong that the pain was invisible. Only later, when the danger had passed, did people faint from the shock of pain. Mothers fled with their children in their arms. When the heat became unbearable, the children's clothes caught fire. The mothers couldn't let go. They continued running, clutching their burning babies until they themselves fell, engulfed in flames. Rescuers found them later, mother and child, charred, merged into one indistinguishable mass. More than 300 people hid in one of the basements, designed for 50. When rescuers opened the basement 3 days later, everyone was dead. Not from the fire hadn't reached this basement. They suffocated. The temperature inside rose above 70 degrees Celsius. The oxygen burned out. People died from hypoxia and heat stroke. The bodies lay in layers, like firewood. At the bottom were those who had descended first. At the top were those who had tried to escape last. Otto Bremer, a firefighter with 20 years of experience, said, "We found a whole street of people trying to run to the river. They didn't make it. The wind was so strong it knocked them off their feet. And when they fell, the heat melted their clothes and skin right on the asphalt. We saw body imprints on the road, as if they had been pressed into molten wax, and then the wax had hardened. The air itself ignited." This isn't a metaphor. At temperatures above 700 degrees Celsius, and with sufficient flammable gases in the atmosphere, air can spontaneously ignite. People who inhaled such air suffered internal burns to their lungs. They fell, clutching their throats, trying to breathe, but every breath was like inhaling fire. Death occurred within minutes, painful and inevitable. Thousands of drowned bodies were found in Hamburg's canals. These were people who had tried to escape the fire by jumping into the water. But the water in the canals had heated up to the temperature of a hot bath, 45–50 degrees Celsius. Many lost consciousness from heat stroke while still in the water. Others suffocated from the smoke that drifted across the surface. By morning, the canals were filled with bodies. Children were lost in the chaos. Rescuers found them wandering among the ruins, calling for their parents. Some were 3 or 4 years old. They couldn't explain who they were, where they lived, or what their names were. They were gathered in makeshift orphanages, hoping that relatives would find them. Many were left without family. Their parents had died, and their documents had burned. Animals suffered too. Horses used for transporting goods stood in the streets, tied to poles or carts. When the firestorm began, they were unable to escape. They were found later, charred carcasses, still tied, in poses of terror and agony. Dogs, cats, birds, every living thing was destroyed by the fire. By midday on July 28th, rescue teams from other cities began arriving in Hamburg. What they saw shocked even seasoned soldiers. One SS officer wrote in his report, "The city has ceased to exist. This isn't destruction, it's total annihilation. I saw Stalingrad after the battle. At least something remained. There's nothing here. Only ashes and corpses." The horrific work of clearing away the bodies begins. There are too many for individual burials. Mass graves are dug, trenches hundreds of meters long. Bodies are piled in rows, dozens, hundreds. Many bodies are impossible to identify, burned beyond recognition. They are buried as unknown. But the summer heat takes its toll. The bodies begin to decompose quickly. The smell becomes unbearable. The threat of epidemics arises. The decision is made to cremate the bodies right on the streets. Giant pyres are built, and hundreds of bodies are burned. The smoke from these fires mingles with the smoke from the still smoldering ruins. Official statistics will be calculated for months. The final figures, approximately 42,000 dead on the night of July 27, 28 alone. Another 37,000 were injured. More than 1 million people were left homeless. 250,000 apartments were completely destroyed. 16 square kilometers of the city were wiped off the face of the earth. But behind these numbers lie human tragedies. Every death is someone's mother, father, child, friend. Every wounded person is a ruined life. Every homeless person is a lost past, lost memories, burned photographs, letters, books, everything that made life worth living. Nazi propaganda tries to hush up the scale of the catastrophe. Goebbels forbids the publication of photographs of the destruction, mentioning the exact death toll, or disseminating information about what happened. But information still leaks out. Refugees from Hamburg spread the word in other cities. Soldiers write letters home. Rumors spread faster than propaganda can suppress them. All over Germany, people are beginning to understand. If this happened to Hamburg, it could happen to any city. Berlin, Munich, Cologne, Dresden, no one is safe. War has come to the home front, and it spares no one. Operation Gomorrah continued for several more days, with the British and Americans launching additional strikes. But nothing could compare to the night of July 27th. It was the culmination, the apogee of destruction. The day man proved he could create hell on earth. Hamburg, July 29th, 1943. The city streets resemble a lunar landscape. Not a single building remains in vast tracts of land, the ground covered in a layer of ash and rubble, among which the few survivors crawl listlessly, searching for anything they can call home. Firefighting efforts have been ongoing for 4 days, sometimes not even to save what remains, but to prevent epidemics. The heat, smoke, and decomposing bodies threaten the health of the survivors. The city center is in chaos. Military and civilian rescuers from various cities are working, along with dozens of volunteers who have come to help. Dozens of temporary shelters for those who have lost their homes are being built on the roadsides from sacks, boards, and smoldering rubble. Many have nowhere to live, nowhere to eat, nowhere to quench their thirst. Water pipes are broken, stores have burned down, and food warehouses have been destroyed during the air raids. A city that just a week ago was a symbol of Germany's economic might and cultural heritage has been reduced to a mass of ash, disaster, and suffering. 75% of Hamburg's city center is destroyed. According to official figures, no other major city in the country has seen such a level of destruction. 3,500 buildings have been reduced to rubble, and the same number are beyond repair. The rest are either so damaged that repairs will take years or have become uninhabitable. Where industrial sites once stood, there are now pits, charred carcasses, and rusting machinery. The city's governance system has collapsed. The post office, Telephones and power stations are down. Radio broadcasts are sparse, barely mentioning the disaster. Even Nazi propaganda makes no attempt to justify itself, merely remains silent. The city is plunged into an information vacuum. People don't know if their friends and relatives in neighboring neighborhoods are still alive. Messengers continue to carry the terrible news for days, passing along lists of the dead and mass graves. According to estimates by the Red Cross and German officials, more than 40,000 people have died, approximately 180,000 have been injured, and over 1 million have been left homeless. Survivors line up for water and bread, most losing all faith in the future. The city is paralyzed. Its heart has stopped beating. Such is the government's failure that citizens are tearing down the hateful remnants of Nazi slogans, painting messages to the dead on the ruins, and descending into unprecedented grief. The German authorities realize that the raid on Hamburg is not just the loss of a city, but also a psychological shock for the entire country. Mass evacuations from other major cities begin. Mothers with children move to villages, elderly people abandon their apartments, and officials relocate administrative employees across the country. New building codes are hastily introduced, basements are reinforced, shelters are rebuilt. A wailing belief spreads among the people. If a firestorm occurs here, it could happen again in Berlin, Frankfurt, and Cologne. The moral effect of the operation exceeded even the Allies' expectations. RAF headquarters reported, "The firestorm's effect exceeded all calculations." Churchill announced on the radio, "This was a necessary measure to hasten the end of the war." At the same time, many officers involved in planning the operation expressed doubts, calling it Gomorrah, a biblical punishment that destroyed not only the enemy's infrastructure, but also their own credibility. Several years pass. After the war, Hamburg becomes a byword, a symbol of catastrophe. Rebuilding the city only begins in 1945. New homes are erected, the port and factories are rebuilt, but the memory of the tragedy lives on in descendants, in monuments, and in lists of victims. Every year on the day of the firestorm, mourning bells ring out, and schools hold remembrance lessons. Orphaned families search for each other for decades. Firefighters and rescuers become heroes, and survivors witness an apocalypse created not by the elements, but by calculation. Modern Hamburg is a vibrant and beautiful city, reborn from ruins. But its history remains a warning to all humanity. One week can wipe out an entire world, returning it to primal fear and the need to remember. Operation Gomorrah demonstrated that man is capable of creating hell without the aid of the devil. The flames of Hamburg became a metaphor for a war in which there are no victors, only thousands of lost lives and a millennium of memories of that horror.